A poor woman abandoned her twin babies in the woods. But the millionaire CEO saw everything and did the unthinkable. Sir, it's 1 a.m. Where are you going? Logan didn't take his eyes off the dark road as he gripped the steering wheel tighter. His voice, a low growl, barely masked exhaustion. Anywhere but here. The voice on the other end, his assistant, always efficient, always composed, hesitated. Do you want me to call Dr. Mayers? Logan ended the call. The road stretched endlessly ahead, swallowed by thick trees and flanked by shadows that moved with the wind. Rain lashed against the windshield, and the wipers squeaked in rhythm. But he didn't notice. He hadn't slept in 3 nights, haunted by the same dream. Shattered glass, a child's scream, the twist of metal, and then silence. The memory was always the same. His wife's smile fading in the rearview mirror. His daughter reaching for the balloon in the back seat. The truck swerving too fast around the corner. Logan pressed harder on the gas pedal. The forest road was one he had driven 100 times before, back when life had meaning. But tonight, it felt like foreign ground, silent and cruel. Then he saw her. Just ahead, through the blur of rain and fog, a figure emerged. Small, hunched, moving between trees like a ghost. Logan slowed. Headlights illuminated a young woman, soaked through. Blonde hair plastered her face. She cradled something in each arm, bundles wrapped in blankets. Logan's breath caught. The woman moved with urgency, but not panic. She reached a gnarled old tree just off the roadside, knelt, and gently laid the 2 bundles at its roots. Rain poured over her as she kissed each one softly on the forehead. I'm sorry, she whispered through sobs. Please survive. Then she stood. Logan threw the gear into park and jumped out. Hey, wait! His voice sliced through the rain. She turned slightly at the sound, just a flicker of movement. But then she ran, disappearing into the dark woods beyond. Her thin frame vanished into the mist like she had never been there at all. What are you doing? He shouted after her, stumbling over branches and mud as he chased into the tree line. Come back. But the only answer was the wind. He stopped, listened. Nothing. No footsteps, no breathing, no trace. The rain intensified, soaking through his coat. Logan stood alone beneath the swaying trees, breath heavy, heart thudding. He turned back. The 2 bundles lay where she had left them, huddled against the roots of the tree, barely moving. He knelt beside them, hands trembling as he peeled back the soaked fabric. 2 infants, twins, no more than a few weeks old. Their lips were pale, their eyes shut tight. One gave a soft whimper, the other barely moved. A sob caught in Logan's throat. Carefully, he scooped them both into his arms, pressing their small bodies against his chest to share what little warmth he had. You're okay, he whispered, more to himself than to them. You're okay. You're going to be okay. But he wasn't sure. He raced back to the car, opened the back door, and laid them gently on the leather seats. His hands fumbled with the heater, blasting it to full. He peeled off his coat and wrapped it around them, then started the engine and sped back toward the city. Every raindrop felt like a heartbeat. Every mile felt like a prayer. He glanced in the rearview mirror at the tiny bodies bundled in damp fabric in desperation, and something inside him cracked. He had not held a child since the funeral. He had not wanted to, but tonight he had no choice. Tonight, someone had left behind life. And for the first time in 2 years, Logan Montgomery didn't feel like dying. He felt like saving something, maybe even himself. The tires of Logan's black SUV crunched softly against the gravel as he pulled into the driveway of his estate. The rain had lessened to a drizzle, but everything remained soaked, glistening under the dim glow of the porch lights. The mansion stood tall and silent, its grand facade as cold and empty as it had been for the last 2 years. Logan stepped out, carefully lifting the 2 sleeping infants, still wrapped in his coat. As he pushed open the heavy front door, the familiar creak echoed into the silence, followed by the soft whimper of one of the babies. He paused at the threshold, something catching in his chest. This place, once full of warmth, voices, life, had been nothing but hollow for so long. He carried them upstairs, his shoes silent on the carpeted steps. He walked straight to a room he hadn't entered in over a year. The nursery. Everything inside was exactly how it had been left. The pale pink curtains, the bookshelf filled with fairy tales, the crib with its faded mobiles still turning ever so slightly, as if stirred by memory. He couldn't bring himself to use that crib. Not yet. Instead, he brought them into the adjacent guest room, laid out towels, and gently began drying their small bodies. He opened a chest at the foot of the bed, pulling out a set of old baby blankets, soft cotton printed with little stars. They had belonged to her, his daughter. He worked quietly, methodically, wrapping them, warming them, placing warm compresses near their feet. He remembered the temperature, setting she liked, the lullabies that used to play in this house. His hands moved with certainty, muscle memory long buried under grief. After making sure both babies were stable, he called his private physician. It's urgent. 2 newborns, mild hypothermia. I need you here now. An hour later, the doctor confirmed both babies were cold, but not in danger. A few more hours of warmth and rest, and they'd recover fully. Logan didn't leave their side. He sat in the rocking chair in the corner, eyes fixed on the tiny form sleeping under the soft light of the bedside lamp. The rain tapped gently against the windows now, a lullaby of its own. His mind drifted to that night, his birthday. His wife had picked up their daughter from her piano lesson. They were on their way home, balloons in the back seat, a cake on her lap. He remembered the last voicemail, his daughter singing happy birthday, off-key and laughing. Then the phone call. Then the silence. It had broken him. Tonight, that silence had been shattered again, but this time by the smallest cries in the woods. He hadn't expected to feel anything when he held them. He had expected panic, maybe confusion, but instead, something deep inside him stirred. Something he thought had died along with them. Logan leaned forward, brushing a fingertip over the tiny fist of the baby girl. Hope. He didn't know why that word came to him, but it felt right. Then he looked at the baby boy, his chest rising and falling rhythmically, lips slightly parted. Ray! Hope and Ray. 2 names, 2 lives. He whispered the words aloud, his voice raw. You're safe now. You're here. He sat back, eyes never leaving them, and something foreign crept into his heart. It wasn't joy. Not yet, but it was something close, something warmer than grief, something almost human. Logan exhaled slowly, pressing a hand to his chest, and for first time in 2 years, he felt his heart beat again. Logan couldn't shake the image of her from his mind. The way she had held those babies, kissed their foreheads, whispered apologies into the storm, and vanished into the trees. It haunted him, not just because of the danger she had left them in, but because of the look in her eyes. Not cruelty, not recklessness, desperation. He had to know more. Within days, he hired a private investigator. The man was efficient, experienced, and connected. They scoured traffic cameras along the forest road, checked gas stations, and cross-referenced shelter logs with facial recognition tools. Finally, a match appeared. A battered women's shelter on the outskirts of the city. The woman was listed under the name Rachel D., but her face, pale, hollow, with tired blue eyes and long, unkempt blonde hair, was unmistakable. Her real name was Emily. Logan didn't tell anyone he was going. He just got in his car and drove. The shelter was modest, tucked between 2 abandoned buildings. He walked through the front gate, ignoring the cold looks from staff. One of the counselors hesitated when he asked for Emily, but she eventually gestured to the back garden. Logan stepped outside. There she was. Emily sat alone on a worn wooden bench, wrapped in a gray blanket, her shoulders hunched. Her face was thinner than he remembered, her eyes distant, almost vacant, like she hadn't truly been present in weeks. In her arms, she held a cloth doll, faded pink, missing one eye. She rocked it gently, as if it breathed. Logan took a step forward, gravel crunching beneath his shoes. Emily looked up. Recognition dawned. Her eyes widened, and she clutched the doll tighter. She started to rise but faltered. Fear etched into her features. She stumbled back a step. Logan didn't stop. He stood before her, soaked in quiet fury. How could you abandon them like that? His voice was low, trembling with restrained rage. In the rain, in the cold? What kind of mother? Emily burst into tears before he could finish. Her knees buckled, and she dropped the bench, shoulders shaking. I didn't want to, she choked. I had no choice. Logan stood frozen, the anger in his chest twisting into confusion. Emily looked up, eyes shimmering. You don't know what it was like, she whispered. He would have killed them. He almost did. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Then the words began to pour out, ragged and rushed, like she'd been holding them in for years. I was with him for 3 years. He was fine at first. Then the drugs took over. He beat me, trapped me. I tried to leave so many times, but he always found me, always dragged me back. I couldn't call the police. He said if I ever tried again, he'd hurt them, the babies. She hugged the doll tighter, trembling. I thought if I left them somewhere someone kind might find them, they'd have a chance. I didn't want to let go. I stayed up all night before that. I looked them in the eyes, and I told them I loved them, and then I walked away. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I came back, she added, barely audible. I came back an hour later. They were gone. I searched the woods, screaming, but they were gone. Logan sat slowly on the edge of the bench, his voice quieter now. You never reported it, never told anyone. Emily turned to him, desperation in her eyes. I was afraid they'd take them away forever, that no one would believe me, that someone worse might get them. She wiped her nose with her sleeve. I've been praying every day since, just hoping maybe someone good, maybe they lived. Logan stared at her. The woman before him wasn't a monster. She was a broken mother trying to survive, and now he understood. Emily sat in silence for a long moment, her hands trembling around the old cloth doll she clutched like a lifeline. The rain had started again, soft and steady, tapping lightly against the garden's tin awning. Logan remained still beside her, the sharp edge of his anger now dulled by the weight of her words. She took a breath, then another. My boyfriend, he wasn't always like that, she began, voice distant, like she was speaking through layers of memory. But the drugs changed him. He got paranoid, angry. I was his possession, not a person, just something to control. She looked at Logan, eyes glistening. He locked the windows, took my phone, punched the walls just to watch me flinch. When I got pregnant, I thought it might change him. I thought maybe love could fix it. Her voice broke on the word, but it didn't. It got worse. She turned her gaze to the doll, smoothing its tattered dress with her fingers. When the twins were born, he didn't even come to the hospital. Said they weren't his. Said they were weak. That if I ever tried to leave, he'd make sure none of us made out alive. Logan exhaled slowly, his jaw tight. I tried 3 times to run. Each time, he found us, took the babies from me, locked me in the bathroom, threatened to drop them. Emily's shoulders shook. I realized if I stayed, they'd die. If I ran again and he found us, they'd suffer. She bit her lip hard until a drop of blood welled. So I made a plan, waited for a night with heavy rain. I packed 2 bottles, wrapped them in the warmest blankets I had. I kissed them both. I told them Mommy loved them more than anything in the world. Tears slid down her cheeks, mixing with the mist on her skin. I thought if I left them somewhere safe, somewhere quiet, someone kind would find them, someone who could give them what I couldn't. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I didn't even make it 2 hours before I turned back. Emily closed her eyes, remembering the tree. They all looked the same. I was soaked, screaming. My hands were bleeding from branches, from clawing through the undergrowth. And when I got there, her voice cracked. They were gone. She pressed the doll to her chest and rocked slightly. I screamed until I couldn't anymore, begged the sky to undo it. I curled up on the ground like an animal and cried until the rain soaked through my bones. She looked at Logan then, face pale, eyes raw. Please, if you saw them, if you know where they are, just tell me they're safe, that they're warm, that they're loved. Her lips trembled. I still see them in my dreams. 2 little faces, tiny fingers reaching for me. I never stopped being their mother. Logan sat in silence. Her pain seeped into the air around him like fog, thick and inescapable. All this time, he'd imagined a woman who didn't care, someone cruel, selfish. Instead, He had found a mother who had sacrificed everything, sanity, dignity, even her own heart, for a chance to save her children. He looked at her, at the way her fingers trembled, the way she still rocked that doll like it breathed, like it mattered, and something shifted inside him. Slowly, gently, he sat down beside her. His voice, when it came, was soft. "Emily," he said, using her name for the first time. She looked up, startled, but this time she didn't flinch. Emily's voice was barely a whisper, but it cut through the silence like a blade. "You saw them, didn't you? The babies, please. Are they safe? Are they alive?" She looked at Logan with a desperation that made her whole body tremble. Her hands gripped the edges of the bench. Her breath hitched. It was not a demand. It was a plea, a mother's final hope teetering on the edge of collapse. Logan felt his chest tighten. He saw the truth in her eyes, the raw ache of someone who had lost everything and still woke up every day pretending to breathe. But he couldn't tell her. Not yet. Not when so much was still uncertain. His jaw clenched as he forced the words out, flat and cold. "I'm not the one who found them." Emily stared at him, confusion flickering across her face. Then disappointment. Then devastation. Her shoulders crumpled inward. She turned away, hands covering her mouth as a sob escaped. I thought maybe." Logan said nothing. He couldn't. His own guilt pressed heavy in his throat. She stood slowly, retreating back into the shelter, the doll still clutched in her arms. Logan remained seated on the bench for a long while after, the rain soaking into his coat, watching the door she had disappeared behind. He left without saying goodbye. That night he couldn't sleep. He kept seeing her face. The way her voice cracked in a word, babies. The way her entire body seemed to collapse when hope slipped from her grasp. He knew that pain. He had lived it. He had buried it with a little white coffin and a gravestone carved too early. But she was still breathing, barely, and she needed more than closure. So he made a decision. He contacted one of the best trauma therapists in the city and quietly arranged for Emily to receive counseling through the shelter. Anonymous funding, private sessions, no mention of him. Then he pulled a few strings and got her a part-time job at a public library in a quieter part of town, shelving books, helping with story time, preparing snacks in the backroom kitchen. At first, Emily barely spoke to anyone. She kept her hair pulled low over her face and avoided eye contact. But children were different. They smiled at her. They didn't ask questions. They just listened, and Emily began to smile back. Her voice, once so small, grew stronger during reading hour. Her hands, once clenched, now moved freely through pages of fairy tales and lullabies. Slowly, a piece of her began to return. Logan visited the library sometimes, never too close, never too long. He'd stand in the nonfiction aisle, pretending to browse cookbooks while stealing glances at her through the shelves, watching her laugh softly as she handed a book to a child, watching her brush a strand of blonde hair behind her ear as she scribbled notes for story time. He didn't know what he was waiting for. He only knew that watching her heal felt like watching a flower grow in a place he thought was dead. Then one afternoon, it happened. He was leaning against a shelf, answering an email on his phone, when she walked past, carrying a stack of picture books. Her eyes flicked toward him, then down to the phone in his hand, and froze. On the screen was a photo. Hope and Ray, sitting side by side in a field of dandelions. Ray had a milk mustache. Hope had a yellow flower tucked behind her ear. Emily stopped walking. Her book slipped from her arms and thudded softly against the carpet. She stared at the screen. Her lips parted. Her voice came out in a breathless whisper. "That's them, isn't it?" Logan looked up. Their eyes met, and for the first time, he had no words. Logan didn't sleep that night. He lay awake in the dark, staring at the ceiling as Emily's voice echoed in his mind again and again. "That's them, isn't it?" He could still see the way her eyes had locked onto the screen, like her soul recognized the tiny faces before her brain could catch up. In that moment, the entire world he had carefully, meticulously built around Hope and Ray began to feel paper thin. He had spent 2 years wrapping them in love, in safety, in silence. He had become their guardian, their father in every way that mattered. But no amount of bedtime stories or gentle kisses could erase the truth, now staring him in the face. Their mother still lived, and she had never stopped loving them. Logan had never felt more conflicted. His instincts screamed to protect them, to shield them from more pain, from confusion, from the possibility of losing the stability they had finally found. But the look in Emily's eyes, it haunted him. Not the desperation, not even the guilt. It was the love. It had never left her. Even in the shelter, even when she believed she'd lost him forever, he stood on the edge of a decision that would rewrite all of their lives. One step forward, and nothing would ever be the same. But sometimes, the bravest thing you could do for someone you loved was let them know the truth. The next morning, Logan drove to the library. Emily was shelving books in the children's section, her soft blonde hair tucked behind her ears, a faint smudge of ink on her cheek from the storytime notes she'd written earlier. She noticed him before he spoke, her body tensed, eyes wary, as if already bracing for whatever storm was coming. He approached slowly. "Come with me," he said gently. Emily's hands froze on the spine of a book. "Where?" "My home." She flinched as if struck. "Are you going to press charges?" He paused and shook his head. "I want you to see something." The drive was quiet. Emily sat rigid, her fingers tangled tightly in her lap. The seatbelt felt like it was strangling her. She couldn't tell if it was hope or dread tightening her chest. Maybe both. Maybe that's what guilt always felt like when it carried love inside it. As the iron gates of Logan's estate swung open, Emily's breath caught. She had expected coldness, wealth, walls built to keep people out, but instead, she saw warmth. The windows glowed golden in the early afternoon light. The garden swayed with soft breezes. Everything about the place felt lived in, not locked away. Logan led her up the steps, through the vast entrance hall, and down a corridor lined with children's drawings and finger paint artwork taped beside black and white portraits. Her steps slowed. Then he stopped in front of a door. When he opened it, her world stopped moving. The nursery was painted a soft, hopeful yellow. There were toys scattered on a plush rug, stuffed animals, picture books, and 2 tiny beds with matching quilts. In the center of it all, Hope, holding a plush bear almost her size, and Ray, cradling the arms of a smiling nanny, his bottle half empty in his small hands. They were alive. They were safe. They were laughing. Emily dropped to her knees. Her breath caught so violently she thought her chest would split open. "My babies." Hope looked up. Her eyes blinked curiously at the blonde woman on the floor. Then Ray turned too, blinking at the sound of her voice. Emily didn't move closer. Her hands hovered midair, trembling. Logan knelt beside her. "They've been cared for, loved, protected," he said, voice low and rough. "But I've always known something was missing." Emily looked at him, tears cascading down her cheeks, her voice barely audible. "I thought I lost him forever." Logan reached out and took her hand. "They don't need just a home," he said softly. "They need their mother." Almost a year later, the mansion on the hill was no longer silent. It was alive. Mornings began not with the echo of emptiness, but with soft footsteps padding down the hallway, tiny voices calling out for breakfast, and the sound of cartoons playing too loudly in the background. Hope and Ray, now just over 2 years old, had turned every room of the once cold estate into a playground. Emily stood in the kitchen, humming as she stirred pancake batter, wearing an oversized sweater and her hair in a soft braid down her back. Logan was beside her, attempting to pour juice while simultaneously dodging Ray, who had decided that kitchen floors made perfect racetracks. The walls were different now. Logan had filled them with pictures, candid moments, not posed. Hope smearing spaghetti on her cheeks. Emily reading in the garden with a blanket over her legs. Ray asleep with his favorite stuffed lion. The past, with all its pain and grief, still existed, but now it shared space with something else. Life. In the afternoons, Emily often sat in the sunroom, a blanket draped over her legs, a notebook open on her lap. The pages were filled with soft pencil sketches, ideas, bits of dialogue. Her first book had been published 2 months ago, When Light Found Us. It was a children's book, short, simple, but deeply personal. The story followed 2 tiny stars lost in the night, found by a man who had forgotten how to hope. Together, They searched the star who had given them life. And when they were finally reunited, the darkness lifted. It wasn't just fiction. It was truth disguised in stars and trees and soft light. The book had received quiet praise in small parenting circles. A few libraries ordered it. A school invited her to speak. She declined the first invitation, but not the second. Logan had watched her grow back into herself one layer at a time. She was still quiet sometimes, still lost in thought when rain fell too hard, but she laughed more. She stood straighter. She cooked without flinching when a cabinet door slammed. And she wrote. Every day, Hope and Ray thrived under her love. Every bruise was kissed, every tantrum held through. She was patient, imperfect, but completely devoted. One late afternoon, Logan returned from a work trip and found the living room in a state of cozy chaos. Blankets forming forts, books scattered like petals, and Emily asleep on the rug with the twins curled beside her. He stood in the doorway for a long time, just watching. His phone buzzed with some urgent message from the office, but he didn't answer. He stepped quietly around them, picked up a stuffed bear that had rolled away, and tucked it back beside Ray. Later that night, with the children asleep and the house quiet again, he and Emily sat in the study. "I started the next book," she said, flipping through her notebook. "It's called The House That Learned to Laugh." Logan raised an eyebrow. "Sounds familiar?" She smiled. "It's about a big house that used to be scared of noise, but then two little lights moved in and one big, quiet man who didn't know he had a heart anymore." He chuckled softly, then reached for her hand. "Emily, I thought I was done with life, with love. I thought what happened to me meant the end of everything that mattered." She squeezed his fingers gently. "It wasn't the end," she said. "It was just a dark place. And sometimes the light doesn't find you right away. Sometimes you have to become the one who walks toward it." He looked at her, really looked, and saw not just a woman who had left two babies in the forest, but the woman who had come back, who had fought her way through guilt, grief, and silence to love them again. The mansion no longer echoed with ghosts. Now it sang with lullabies and laughter and the soft footsteps of second chances. The garden was lit like a dream. Strings of soft white lights draped between the trees, glowing like tiny stars caught in a gentle dance. Paper lanterns floated above the patio, swaying with the spring breeze. Laughter echoed under the open sky, blending with the quiet hum of music playing from an old speaker. The melody was one of Emily's favorites, the same lullaby she had once sung quietly to herself in the shelter, pretending the doll in her arms was Hope. But tonight it was real. Hope and Ray were turning 3. The twins wore paper crowns made of gold foil and glitter, their cheeks sticky with frosting and fingers tangled in ribbon. A table held a cake shaped like a castle, flanked by trays of fruit, tiny sandwiches, and candles shaped like stars. Emily stood by the trellis, a simple cream dress flowing around her legs. Her eyes shimmered, not with tears, but with something steadier. Joy, peace, the kind that comes not from perfection, but from healing. Logan moved through the crowd, greeting neighbors, pouring lemonade, checking to make sure the music didn't drown out the sound of children's laughter. He was different now, softer around the edges, but no less strong. The walls he had once built to survive had been taken down brick by two tiny hands and one brave voice that had never stopped calling herself Mom. As the sun dipped low, casting long golden shadows, Logan made his way to Emily. He stood beside her for a long moment, watching Ray toddle after Balloon, and Hope tried to explain the rules of tag to a confused puppy. Emily smiled, her fingers brushing his. "They look so happy," she whispered. Logan nodded. "They are." Then, almost like he'd been waiting for the perfect moment, the clouds parted gently and a soft spring rain began to fall. Not heavy, not cold, just a mist of silver light falling from the sky. Some guests laughed and dashed for umbrellas. Others stayed where they were, turning their faces upward with wonder. Emily looked at Logan, then back at the children, who squealed with delight as the drops touched their arms, their cheeks, their upturned palms. She didn't run. She stepped forward into the open yard, her arms slightly outstretched. Hope saw her and ran straight toward her, giggling. Ray followed close behind. slipping once, then picking himself up and charging ahead. They reached her at the same time, both hugging her legs. Emily dropped to her knees, pulled them close, and kissed the tops of their heads. Rick, Logan's longtime friend and former colleague, stood nearby, watching. He had come with his own daughter, a little older now, wearing a tutu and a wide smile. He stepped closer and said softly to Emily, "They gave us another life. We just had to be brave enough to live it." Emily turned her head, eyes full. "We almost didn't," she said. Rick nodded. "Almost?" Emily looked down at the twins, who had taken to spinning in slow circles with arms stretched wide, their crowns now askew and soaked. She crouched low and whispered gently, "You saved me, my loves. I thought I gave you away, but you came back." Logan stood behind her, umbrella untouched in his hand, face turned up to the sky. The rain didn't hurt anymore. It didn't haunt. It didn't drown. It washed. It healed. Later, when the guests had left and the lanterns still flickered in the soft wind, Logan, Emily, Hope, and Ray sat together on the old wooden bench beneath the pear tree. Hope curled up on Emily's lap. Ray leaned into Logan's chest. The rain had slowed to a soft drizzle, barely more than a kiss on the leaves. Logan reached for Emily's hand. She looked at him and whispered, "Do you ever think we were all just waiting to find each other?" He smiled, brushing a wet strand of hair from her cheek. "I think we were the light at the end of each other's storm." They sat in silence, the kind that spoke louder than words. In the background, the last notes of the lullaby faded, and the garden slowly fell into a hush. The darkness had not vanished, but they were no longer afraid of it because now they had light, and they had each other. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that even in the darkest moments, light can still find its way in, then please take a moment to share it with someone who needs hope today. At Soul Stirring Stories, we believe that one story can change a life. If you felt something tonight, love, loss, healing, or the power of second chances, then don't forget to like, comment, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel. There are more stories waiting for you. Stories that heal. Stories that remind you that you're not alone. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the light we're looking for is just one act of kindness away.